So it's early 2021, and here in the UK, hopefully we're only a couple of months away from being able to venture outside and go and enjoy a nice cold pint in a pub and see old friends and realise that over the last 12 months our social skills have completely buggered off. And that means once again relying heavily on our mobile networks when conversation inevitably falters and we end up just showing each other funny TikTok videos that we've found. So now is definitely a great time to jump on that 5G bandwagon and get ourselves set for a post-COVID world. And it's good news then, because right now you can grab yourself a budget-friendly 5G smartphone from a selection of manufacturers including Motorola, OnePlus, Google and Xiaomi, some of which come in at under 200 quid, and many of them boasting great gaming chops, impressive battery life and even slick 120Hz displays. Now I've personally tested and reviewed all of the budget 5G smartphones I'm about to bang on about, so go check out those reviews if any particular one tickles your fancy. And for more on the latest greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now first up is one of the most impressive value handsets launched just before 2021, the clunkily named but rather lovely Xiaomi Mi 10T Lite. Seriously, the specs of this absolute unit are just as eye-catching as this gorgeous rose gold paint job. The standard price of the Mi 10T Lite at the time I shot this was 229 quid here in the UK direct from Xiaomi, and for that price point you get some really premium features including a massive 6.67 inch IPS display with 120Hz refresh rate, and of course you got that full 5G support thanks to Qualcomm's Snapdragon 750G chipset. That slick and smooth Full HD Plus screen is great for gaming as well as saying bollocks to work with an all-day anime marathon. Meanwhile, that 750G power means you can blaze through titles like PUBG and Call of Duty with the graphics set to high and keep a gorgeous fluid frame rate. The 4820mAh battery isn't as big as some others in this roundup, but you'll still get 2 days of use if you don't go nuts. In fact, the only real weak link here is the quad camera, led by a 64MP primary sensor which sometimes struggles if conditions aren't quite perfect. Of course, a major factor in how well you get on with the Mi 10T Lite is your general feelings towards Xiaomi's MiUI launcher. This had some funky features like that control center which has been shamelessly lifted from Apple, and some dedicated gaming tools as well, although it can also be a little bit buggy at times. Now in early 2021, Xiaomi also launched this bad boy here, the Redmi Note N10 5G, which is a bit cheaper than that Mi 10T Lite, but stick the two side by side and it's not quite as tempting. It's kind of like having a choice between a fine single malt and a shot of green sours. I mean, I really like a shot of green sours and it'll probably cost you less, but it's not my first choice. For one, the Redmi Note N10 5G isn't as eye-poppingly attractive as that Mi 10T Lite, plus that 6.53-inch IPS screen lacks the super smooth 120Hz finish. Performance can be a wee bit janky too, while the camera tech is a bit hit and miss, although the battery life is certainly as long as you like. Besides that, it's basically the same MiUI experience here with a stereo speaker setup, headphone jack and all of the good stuff you love about cheap Xiaomi blowers. But all things considered, I'd go Mi 10T unless you see a seriously good deal on this thing. If you'd rather have yourself a completely pure Android experience, then I would definitely highly recommend Motorola's Moto G 5G Plus. Because while Xiaomi has fully transformed that Android experience with its MiUI 12 launcher, Motorola has instead gone full stock, with just a couple of bonus features like motion gestures and face recognition chucked on top. The Moto G 5G Plus sports Qualcomm's very capable Snapdragon 765 chipset, so you can merrily game away on whatever the hell you like, with a performance boost over that Mi 10T Lite, so the phone shouldn't show its age anytime soon. And Motorola now includes similar gaming features to Xiaomi's MiUI launcher as well, to help keep you focused on the game, help block notifications, stuff like that. And yeah, as both the phone's name and its inclusion in this roundup heavily hints, you've got that full 5G support on there too. Like the Mi 10T Lite, this blower serves up another flippin' massive 6.7-inch Full HD Plus IPS screen, this time with HDR10 support. And the defining feature here is that 21:9 cinema wide design, which means you'll get a proper widescreen view of your games or movies with minimal letterboxing. And the Moto G 5G Plus serves up a 90Hz refresh rate on that display as well, not quite up to the same level as that Xiaomi phone, but I'll be buggered if my knackered old peepers can tell the difference. And battery life is just as bloody good as well, with a 5000mAh cell stuffed inside of this thing, while a 48MP primary camera does a bang up job with everyday snaps. Want to know more? Well, just like the Mi 10T 10T Lite, I was using the Moto G 5G Plus as my full-time smartphone ahead of my in-depth review, which is live right now on TechSperts, go check that out. And yet another budget-friendly 5G smartphone, the cost around the same as that Moto blower, is the Realme X50 5G. Now this is actually one of my favourite Realme smartphones of 2020, boasting Qualcomm's beefy Snapdragon 765G platform. That's similar to the Moto G 5G Plus's chipset, but with a boosted GPU for a further improved gaming experience. That's great news if you love blasting new arseholes in your mates online. And yes, there is yet another proper gaming mode to keep you focused and to keep things running smoothly. And you should find you get good returns from that 4200 mAh battery as well, which yet significantly smaller than a lot of the other rivals in this roundup, but I still found that the Realme X50 5G comfortably made it through even the most arduous of days. As for the rest of the phone, well, that's generally just as stunning. That 6.57-inch IPS screen is once again crisp and colourful, while the 120Hz refresh rate is a match for Xiaomi's Mi 10T Lite. However, the global version of the X50 5G unfortunately uses Samsung's JM1 sensor for the 48-megapixel primary camera, and this proves inferior to the Moto G 5G Plus and is just about a match for Xiaomi's blower. Realme's handsets use the imaginatively titled Realme MiUI launcher, which is kinda clunky in times, especially that really dense settings menu, but it does have some great bonus features as well, like the aforementioned gaming mode and some greater customization options compared with just general stock Android. Besides that, you've got all the usual features here, including a headphone jack and NFC support, although there is no way to expand the 128 gigs of storage. For a little bit less cash, you can have yourself a Realme 7 5G smartphone instead, although post Black Friday it only seems to be a 20 quid difference and the specs are more or less on par. Rather than a Snapdragon chip here, you've got MediaTek's very capable Dimensity 800U platform, which again boasts onboard 5G, and is perfectly capable of playing games like Call of Duty and PUBG. The Dimensity's efficient running means you'll get close to 2 full days of use on a charge as well. You've got a solid view of your games, movies and all those other bits with the same sizable Full HD Plus IPS screen on board, complete with that smooth as buttery Pwn Store Balls 120Hz refresh action. However, like the X50 5G, that 48-megapixel primary camera is once again very limited in its abilities, often stumbling in strong light. Now, one of my other favourite budget 5G smartphones in 2021, rocking a Dimensity chipset as well, is the brilliant value Oppo Reno 4Z 5G. And this thing used to cost you over 300 quid, but at the time I shot this, you can find it for around 250 quid, which is an absolute frickin' bargain. This is another Dimensity 800 series smartphone, and like the Realme 7 5G, you can happily blaze your way through a few games of Call of Duty, PUBG, whatever you fancy, when you just feel like murdering some strangers in a bloody and brutal fashion. Battery life is very respectable despite the smaller 4500 mAh cell, and yeah, shock surprise, you've got a 6.6-inch Full HD Plus IPS display with a 120Hz refresh rate. Oppo's smartphones use the Color OS launcher slapped on top of Android, which is essentially the same thing as that Realme UI launcher, just under a different name. It's got all those same messy bits, but the same great bonus stuff shoved on there as well. And just like the Realme X50 5G, here on the Oppo Reno 4Z 5G, you've got a headphone jack, you've got NFC support, but you don't have any way to expand that 128 gigs of internal storage. That 48-megapixel rear camera does a decent job for capturing everyday snaps, where you've also got a dual lens selfie setup for gorgeous portrait shots. Well, gorgeous if you're not a stressed out baldy bugger like me. And another smartphone manufacturer that has fully embraced 5G is OnePlus, who's pumped out a couple of budget-friendly 5G offerings in 2020. First up, there's the OnePlus Nord, which costs just over 350 quid and boasts the same Snapdragon 765G chipset as Realme's X50 5G. So no surprise therefore that online ultraviolence is a thing of glory and wonder, playing with a perfectly smooth frame rate. And while the OnePlus Nord's battery life isn't quite as strong as some of the other rivals that I've mentioned in this best 5G budget smartphones roundup, it's still good enough to get you through a fairly hefty day more often than not, and you do still have that 30-watt fast charging when you do finally run out of juice. I love that refreshingly compact-ish design, especially in this lovable blue hue. And that 6.44-inch OLED screen is a stunner, boasting gorgeous contrast and punchy colours, plus a smooth 90Hz finish. It's definitely one of the best displays in this group by far. The OnePlus Nord's quad camera setup uses a 48 megapixel primary lens with Sony's IMX586 sensor, and while it's not infallible, this does a decent job with photo quality in good conditions. Plus you have a dual selfie cam up front, including an ultra wide option when you want to fit lots of heads in or some serious background action. And on top of all that, you've got that lovable Oxygen OS experience as well, with a guaranteed 2 years of OS updates to keep you looking fresh. And if you find that you can't quite stretch up all the way to that near £400 asking price, well, an alternative option is the OnePlus Nord N10 5G. This more affordable alternative trims 50 quid off of the cost of the original Nord, and while the standard Nord's lovely OLED display is sadly replaced here with a mere IPS panel, you do at least get a headphone jack and expandable storage on the N10, two things missing from the original. Games like Call of Duty Mobile still run absolutely fine, even though the Snapdragon 765G platform has been cut back to a Snapdragon 690 chipset. Thankfully, you've still got OnePlus's handy Fnatic gaming mode on board to hoard the phone's resources for the game and also make sure you're not distracted by any pesky messages popping up on screen. Battery life is also actually a bit better here than the original Nord 2, but the camera tech on the N10 is rather basic, and I found that my handset was quite buggy to boot. And last up in this roundup of the best budget 5G smartphones of 2021, if you can stretch just that little bit extra, I'd highly recommend grabbing yourself a Google Pixel 4a 5G, which has just dropped to a Nat's pube under 400 quid. This upgrades the original Pixel 4a with the more powerful Snapdragon 765G chipset, also found in that Realme X50 5G, so it's a proper beefcake as well as fully 5G-ified. Now, 6.24-inch OLED screen is still bordered by some fairly chunky bezels, but this is a reasonably compact handset for 2021. And that display is bright, colourful, and boasts razor-sharp contrast. But the rather stunning highlight of any of Google's Pixel smartphones is undoubtedly the camera tech, and frankly the Pixel 4a 5G boasts the best optics of any smartphone in this best budget 5G phones roundup. Indoors and out, you'll get plenty of fine detail packed into your pics thanks to the dependable 12.2 megapixel shooter. And it is just a case of point, shoot and bosh, great looking pics pretty much every time, even when you're in incredibly low light. The Pixel 4a 5G also adds an ultra-wide angle lens to the camera setup, which is something that you don't have with the bog standard 4a. It's not all gravy here on the Pixel 4a 5G though, so for instance there's no micro SD memory card support to boost that internal storage just like a few of the other smartphones in this roundup, and also that screen is unfortunately just a 60Hz effort, it's not a 90Hz or even a 120Hz refresher like some of the others. But if your priority is a shit-hot camera, then this thing will blow your pants off. So there you have it, that's my roundup of the best budget-friendly 5G smartphones that you can get right now in early 2021, stretching from a budget of around 150 quid all the way up to the sort of £400 mark. Now apologies if I missed off your own personal favourite. Again, every smartphone that I featured in this roundup I've personally tested out and reviewed right here on TechSpert, so definitely go check out those reviews if you want to know more about any of the individual phones that I mentioned. Please do slap your own favourites down in the comments below if I have missed them off, and have yourselves a fantastic rest of the week. Oh, and poke subscribe, ding the notifications bell, all that YouTube shit as usual. Cheers everyone, love you!